There is a reason why Warren Buffett is considered a living legend. Are you thinking about getting into investing? Maybe you have heard a lot about it lately and now you want to try it yourself. But maybe you are scared of losing all your money.
And it's gone.
Well, don't worry, because today I'm gonna tell you everything you will need to know in order to get started with investing as a complete beginner. This video will act as a great tutorial on index funds and explain why, as well as many other investors consider them to be the best way to invest for beginners. But first things first. Greetings my fellow investors and welcome to Nordic Finance, where we, or in this case just me Lucas, help you on your financial journey. And before we jump into the video, let me ask you this. Have you invested in the subscribe button yet, as well as deposited a like on the video? Do it! Index funds are very near and dear to my heart. It is how I first got started with investing a little more than a year ago. And let me start by explaining what an index fund actually is. Let's first take a look at a definition. So from Investopedia, an index fund is a type of mutual fund or exchange traded fund ETF with a portfolio considered to match or track the components of a financial market index, such as the Standard & Poor's 500 index or the S&P 500. An index mutual fund is said to provide broad market exposure, low operating expenses, and low portfolio turnover. These funds follow their benchmark index regardless of the state of the markets. Index funds are generally considered ideal core portfolio holdings for retirement accounts, such as individual retirement accounts, IRAs, and 401k accounts. Legendary investor Warren Buffett has recommended index funds as a haven for savings for the later years of life, rather than picking out individual stocks for investment. He has said it makes more sense for the average investor to buy all of the S&P 500 companies at the low cost an index fund offers. End quote. What is key to note here is that for index funds, the goal of the financial firm is not to outperform the underlying index, but simply to match it. If, for example, a particular stock makes up 1% of the index, then the firm managing the index fund will seek to mimic that same composition by making 1% of its portfolio consist of that stock. A good metaphor for all of this that I personally like to use goes like this. Picture a big pie divided into many different sections. One part of it has blueberries on top, another part has raspberries, and on it goes. Customers come into this shop where this pie exists all the time and just buy small pieces out of this big pie. Now, you have a choice. Would you rather A. guess which part of this pie are going to get bought and get paid more each time you are right, i.e. this part of the blueberry pie is going to be really popular today, or B. just get paid less whenever someone buys a piece of pie regardless of which piece it is? Choice A is essentially what buying shares is like, and choice B is basically what an index fund can allow you to do instead. This pie is the market as a whole, and the different sections of it are market segments. The small pieces people buy represent companies and their products. By buying shares in individual stocks, you try to make informed guesses about what pieces are going to do well and what pieces won't. On the other hand, by buying a stake in an index fund, you instead get ownership into the market as a whole. All of this is of course a giant oversimplification, but I believe it gives you a good base from which you can start to think about these two different methods. Now, let me tell you some pros and cons with these two options that I have just outlined. I'll start with index funds since those are the topic of the video. Index funds are a great vehicle for those who want a hands-off approach to growing their wealth. Wealth in this case is defined as the total amount of assets you possess minus all of your liabilities. Combine it with an automatic investing approach or so-called dollar cost averaging, and you can set it up and just make minor tweaks a few times each year. It does not get any easier than that to grow your wealth at a respectable level between 6 to 8% annually over long periods of time. In terms of negatives, the biggest enemy really, as always in investing, yourself. If you panic, you will mess up. If you try to get too fancy with it, you probably will mess up. If you just get bored and don't stick to the plan you've laid out for yourself, you are more than likely to mess up. That's why it's important to make a plan before you start based on solid grounds and then just stick to it. Automating this process again helps a lot. Moving on to stock picking. What I think is the most obvious benefit with this method, as well as its greatest downside, is that you will not match the market. What do I mean when I say that this is both a good and a bad thing? Well, first, if, and this is a big if, you manage to beat the market, even by just 1 or 2 percentage points year over year, over an investing lifetime of say 20 to 30 years, this will result in a big difference, as much as 50% of an increase in your total return. The teeny little detail is that it's insanely difficult to beat the market over any significant amount of time. Almost anyone can do it for 1, 2 or even 3 years in a row, but very few people can repeat it for another 20 to 30 years. There is a reason why Warren Buffett is considered a living legend. Alright, this was supposed to be about the pros. Well, I guess it could be really fun for you if you want to try it anyway. But on a more serious note, there is really not that much upside in trying to manually pick stocks. The downside, on the other hand, is almost infinite. You might get carried away and not only make a dumb investment, but try to use leverage on top of it, leaving you not only back at zero, but deeply in debt. On a happier note, whenever I get an either or option, I try to figure out a way to do both, and this is something I very much recommend you do in this case if you still feel like you would like to give individual stock picking a try. What you can do is to simply allocate around 10% of your total capital for individual stock picks and index the rest. Automating the investing of 90% of your capital like this will protect you from the majority of the potential downside. If you live in any of the Nordic countries and want to set that up on Nordnet, we have 2 great videos on the channel which I will link to. Now, is this video about index funds 100% objective? Absolutely not, since I'm just someone who started out with like 1 year ago, as I told you. However, I have dived into these topics extensively this past year and read maybe a little more than 10 books on the topic. This is the conclusions I've come to so far, and it's what I feel comfortable with recommending to people. I feel like almost everyone would benefit from indexing at least a partial amount of the total that they make each month, but when it comes to trying to pick stocks to invest in, I wouldn't really recommend it for people who are not like really interested in doing so and are prepared to sink a significant, and I mean significant, amount of time into it. So, hopefully now you feel like you know what you need in order to proceed. Please let me know which of these 2 methods I've discussed in the video you preferred, A or B. It will also let me know that you made it this far, and if you did, I am extremely grateful. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy investing.
NANI? Nice.